welcome into Inside 44 with Alex Alexandrou. My name is John Zaglow, Communications Manager here at the City of Aurora, Illinois. And today we have a loaded episode as we talk all things budget. We're looking to demystify the budget process, talk about the process from this year, and then really preview what's to come for next year. Here for the City of Aurora, let's introduce our guests. We have a roundtable here today. It's really exciting. First, of course, the namesake of the program. He is the Chief Management Officer for the City of Aurora. He's a local government veteran. Alex Alexandrou is here. Alex, great to see you.
Great to see you, John.
Yeah, great to have you back. And, of course, we have our Chief Financial Officer, our City Treasurer, and also a local government veteran from the finance world. Chris Minick's here as well. Chris, great to see you.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to educating our residents on the budget process and what's contained in the 2025 document, what we've got upcoming this year.
Of course, we've had many special finance committee meetings, and then obviously the budget recently passed at City Council, and then just this past week we saw the tax levy pass as well. So everything's set and ready to go for 2025, but let's go to the beginning and talk about how this all begins. So we'll start with you, Alex. How does this process begin each and every year?
Well, as much as it seems like it's a year-long process and an all-year-round process, it actually is about an 7 to 8 month process. So March, April is when we do a kickoff, and Chris's team and his budget team do a great job doing a formal kickoff that all departments are required to be at. And that sort of kicks off the process. We use what we call decision packages for new proposals, new ideas. Decision packages have a wide range of objectives. They can be purchasing goods and services. They could be capital improvements. There's a whole host of decision packages that are just one part of the budget process. So it is quite detailed. It's quite involved. It is there are a lot of meetings.
Yes.
But we have a team approach. And in my present role, I've been one of the co-leads with our CFO as well as our budget director since pretty much 2017. But I've been involved in city budgets my whole career as a former department head and chief admin and the like.
And Chris, let me ask you this, because, not everything makes it into the budget, right? So what are your determining factors in terms of deciding what goes into the budget and then making sure that it's balanced every year?
Well, as Alex mentioned a moment ago, we follow a process that has decision packages at its center. Typically, a decision package is any change in an expenditure that's greater than $5,000. So any new programs, any new policies, any new initiatives, any new staffing, any promotions, things of that nature that cost $5,000 or more are part of a decision package. We get those decision packages. They're probably the focus of the main internal portion of the budget, where we have all of our departmental meetings and the meetings where we go through and have the departments explain exactly what they want to do and how they want to change things and implement new initiatives and staffing procedures. And then from there, we incorporate them into the budget. We typically take a look at a couple of things, at least I do. Number one, for me, is probably, can we afford this particular initiative? Number two, for me, is how does this fit with the priorities of the administration? Depending on the answers to number one and number two, we may shuffle some things, we may change some things around. We may make a couple of internal edits, but those are probably the two biggest factors that I utilize when I evaluate a decision package.
We talked about this off air a little bit too, and it's important to note when we talk about decision packages, not everything gets approved. Departments ask for what they want, but not everything makes it into the budget.
100% correct. So, and again, Chris mentioned, we're trying to align our budget to the administration's priorities. Those priorities incorporate community needs, operational needs. We're a big city. We're in 4 different counties. The budget this year is almost $760 million
Correct.
total, but it's balanced, and it covers a lot of elements. public safety, fire, police. We're a water utility, right? We produce our own award-winning water. We take care of miles and miles of roads and bridges and water and sewer as well. So, and then there's the capital element of it. So you have departments who I like to call it, their bread and butter. Let's make sure their bread and butter responsibilities are covered. And then, as Chris said also, if there's a significant change, sometimes the changes come as a result of new technology, new way of doing things, regulatory changes sometimes that the city has to adhere to require significant expenditures sometimes. So it's a sort of a hodgepodge of requests and requirements. And folks, rightfully so, we ask them at times to do some visioning, some long-term planning, and get creative. Unfortunately, there are limits on affordability. There's limits on revenue and expenses. And so we try and, at the end of the day, distill a very realistic but appropriate budget to bring to City Council for approval.
You brought up a good point. We'll kind of get into the crux of it now. Aurora's budget did increase a bit, increased from approximately $560 million to now $759.6. So almost to that $760 million mark. I'll start with you, Chris, and I want Alex to also comment in a second. How do you how do you balance this new budget despite the amount going up by $200 million? I mean, that's a great feat. How did you end up doing that?
Well, primarily the big variance from year to year in a budget is the capital projects. The city is embarking on a pretty robust program of enhancing some facilities that have needed replacement, quite frankly, for some time. I'm specifically speaking of the Public Works facility, and additionally the Central Fire Station downtown and the headquarters related there too. Those are two big elements of what's been going on in the budget for the past couple of years. And we've got two additional fire stations that we're looking at constructing beginning essentially during the 2025 process, just related to service enhancement, service expansion, and a kind of a redistribution of workload for the fire department as determined by a workload study that was done a couple of years ago. So, but in essence, in terms of balancing the budget, we always take a look at what we can afford. And the key is coming back to how much what is the expenditure level that we can afford given the revenues that we expect. We're pretty robust in terms of projecting out our revenues and our expenditures. We typically follow a conservative approach, meaning that we tend to try to under budget our revenues and over budget our expenses, overestimate them, so that we can hopefully have a surplus at the end of the year. Under promise and over produce, I guess, would be the way to state that in a succinct way.
Well, and then from the other side of it, Alex, when you talk about economic development and what this city and the administration has done, clearly the budget's being balanced next year because there is going to be an uptick in tax revenue due to a lot of new businesses here in downtown and across the city, and that's a good thing too.
Absolutely. I mean, generally speaking, every year our EAV, our assessed values for properties go up organically, but we certainly can't have an EAV go up if we're not adding to the inventory of new viable businesses, new developments. Now, some have required incentives, so the incentives have to be baked in, and they're certainly incorporated into the budget for timing, so when we're going to see certain levels of revenue. But all of it goes into the consideration of the budget. And we are thankfully another year away from 2020 and COVID, which had a very dramatic effect in an adverse way on our budget. However, I think the fact that now the common pillars of our local economy, the Chicago Premium Outlet Mall, the Fox Valley Mall, the casino, and the Paramount Theater are back, if not fully back. We know there are still some challenges in the theater world with Paramount, but things are on the uptick there. But if you look at our retail capacity, it is back to pre-COVID levels. And look at what else we're doing out there. For example, by the Chicago Premium Outlet Mall, we're adding the casino. We have plans being announced for the Bilter property we purchased. So creating new districts is something I think you'll see start in this next year's budget. Districts that will be in and of themselves economic engines, sort of mini engines within the city. So I'm most excited to see the continued alignment of our budget to the city's objectives and the administrative's objectives, on safety, economic development, and education and workforce development. Sorry, you're
Yes.
right. So we're excited, and we think this budget puts us well on that path.
And Alex brings up a key point. Economic development is really the lifeblood of a city. A city just simply cannot provide the level of goods and services that it needs to provide, especially a city the size of Aurora, cannot provide the services and programs that it needs to provide to its citizens just based on property tax revenue alone. So those economic development incentives or programs and initiatives, they bring forward additional revenues in terms of discretionary taxes and taxes from citizens who live outside of the borders of Aurora. And that's a very key point and a very key portion of our revenue and helps us to balance the budget and gets at the essence of how do we keep balancing the budget even though the expenditure levels are increasing.
And I should add, we have to do a balancing act every year.
Yes.
It's a balancing act between those revenue-producing opportunities and what affects quality of life, because not everything we budget for is a pure revenue generator. For example, our public works facility, our 3 new fire stations, those, whatever improvements we make in our parks, for example, investments in our infrastructure, those are more a combination of quality of life improvements, which those quality of life improvements make the community more attractive. So, for example, investments in public safety make our town safer, increases response time for fire, makes the community more attractive to come and live, work, and play. And so what we've tried to do in the budget, and we do it every year, is separate out what we know and what we believe will increase revenue and what will increase the quality of life for our residents.
It's really good to note, and something else to note too, because you guys have been through this process for a number of years now, that the public can't get involved. This is not done behind closed doors, right? This is not done in secret meetings. There are special finance committee meetings that occur multiple times throughout, the fall months, mainly September, October, sometimes November. So it's a great opportunity. If they see something in the budget this year, they could say, hey, I don't like that, or I do like that. Let me voice my opinion at the next special finance committee meeting.
Yeah, it's a living, breathing document.
That's
it's
right.
A public document. The approval process all is done in public. And votes are taken, debate is given. We go through an extensive number of special finance meetings by department that are open to the public, that each department presents its proposed budget. And the aldermen have the opportunity to question, seek more information, ask for clarification. And so it's that constant process that all culminates with Chris's team putting together an agreed upon budget. Now our team, we're responsible for making sure that that process gets shepherded along in a timely fashion, that we relay the right information to the council and the public, but we're asking questions ahead of time. So nothing really sees the light of day until we have vetted it and given it the approval to continue. Now, there are pieces to it. There's a tax levy that's a separate but related part to the budget. We have the general fund, which gets most of the attention, I would say, but we also have other funds in the budget. We have proprietary funds that are related to things like the water production, our airport, motor vehicle parking, the golf course. Thank you. So those are budgets within budgets, but the funds there only can be utilized for those services. So it's not like we can take money from golf to pay something else.
Right.
That all has to be self-contained. And so we keep all that straight. And I'm very proud for I don't know how many years in a row, finance and budget continues to win awards. We're audited every year.
Correct.
And our audits all come back crystal clean.
Yes.
Chris employs actuaries too.
Yes.
For different forecasting of things. We do bond calls all the time, right? And bond counsel. So it's an evolving process, but all of it is done in public with report outs. In fact, every council meeting, every city council meeting, there's a portion at the end where Chris reviews bills. Mm-hmm. There's opportunity for questions. So it's a very public and transparent process.
Yes. And Alex talked a little bit about a minute ago about the general fund. And the general fund's about a $255 million fund. It represents $255 million of the $760 million budget that we have coming into 2025. And a general fund is essentially anything you think of as a typical governmental function. Police, fire, public works in terms of snow plowing, a lot of the mayor's office, alderman's office, finance, administration, things of that nature. And the general fund is typically what is supported through the majority of tax revenues as we go forward. There were also some user fees that are in there, but primarily it's tax driven. We also talked about the proprietary fund. Those are actually business activities that we talked about in terms of golf, water, sewer, airport, et cetera. And those are funded by user fees, charges for services, and they're intended to be accounted for and run like businesses. It's intended that they're not generally supported by tax revenues, but those user fees that are charged for those services is what pays for those expenses.
Well, let's get into some budget highlights now. We kind of glossed over them a bit, but let's get into the weeds a little bit more. Some exciting things that Aurora is going to be doing in 2025 thanks to the budget being passed. We talked about public safety. I mean, 3 new fire stations, that is a significant investment, and it's really going to help out the community.
It certainly is. In addition to 3 new fire stations, we are adding more personnel for police and fire. And none of these decisions were made in a vacuum or without extensive study. Chris referenced earlier a fire study for response times and where we need to fill some gaps to shorten response times, and that has resulted in basically the recommendations of where these new fire stations are going. And so we've broken ground on 2 of the 3. The 2 that will be going, one at Nan and Bilter. I think that will go first in terms of construction, followed closely by one farther south on Eola, not far from Liberty. And then we're about to launch the final approvals for what will essentially become the new central fire station. We will still maintain the fire station downtown, but next to APD at 1200 East Indian Trail, there's plenty of room there. We're going to have a combined fire and emergency management agency new central fire station. So all of that will, like I said earlier, enhance public safety, be able to have both police and fire and EMA respond in more timely fashion. And again, we continue to prioritize public safety.
We also have the new Public Works facility. That's going to be coming online hopefully in the first quarter of 2025. That's been certainly a lengthy project, but it's going to be huge for a Public Works team.
Yes.
What do you guys think about that and how that's going to affect city operations?
Well, excuse me, it will enhance public works operations significantly. Having the public works facility and starting to centralize the staff, get them all in one location, and putting into place a modern building with efficiencies built in to enhance workflows and incorporate the newest best practices and actually new facilities. I won't forget that shortly after I started, I actually walked through the existing Public Works facility, and there were actually places in the ceiling where you could see little bits of sky that were poking through. So the Public Works facility is the existing one has served the city well, but it's time to make room for the new, enhanced, modern Public Works
I
facility.
think some folks would call those skylights.
I believe that they were.
And so I think that was a unique feature of the existing
Yes.
central garage. But in all kidding aside, I think the key for me and for our staff is having all public works folks, including management, under one roof.
Yes.
I've worked in another community where they also had scattered site public works, and when they were able to bring everybody together, it made a massive difference in operational effectiveness, efficiencies, and just taking advantage of the latest and greatest environmental setups, the new exhaust type systems, and building new salt dome on the site, state of the art fueling station, and tying to economic development longer term. That's also going to create a significant opportunity for redeveloping the existing central public works facility that's at Illinois and Broadway. So our plan is to demolish that and then put it out to bid. Again, a magnificent location right on the Fox River, and converting that location from a city-owned property to a tax-generating, hopefully mixed-use residential facility to be determined. But clearly, that's been our pattern. We've been at this for several years, talking about it, and now it's becoming a reality.
Let's also get into another big project. I know this one you're particularly passionate about, the River Edge Park expansion.
Sure.
This is huge. It's going to be a game changer for River Edge Park, for the talent that it's able to book, and really for the amount of people that can attend a concert. That's also baked into a bit of the 2025 budget.
Absolutely. Well, the as soon as Kindle Market ends this Christmas, work will commence. We've announced that the park will be closed for the 2025 season, and they will start work both back of house, backstage, and front of house.
Right.
Again, that's a very exciting opportunity. It's going to increase the capacity to close to 10,000. Backstage area will be completely competitive with what today's artists require. A new beverage pavilion out front, a new VIP area, expanded bathrooms. That's one of the big concerns when we've had large events there. And then a new entrance at the south end of River Edge Park. So that's a combination, I would say, of quality of life, but also revenue enhancement for the city and for the Aurora Civic Center Authority, who runs River Edge Park for us. So the goal will be to have it back open for Kindle Market 2025, and then planning in 2025 with ACA for a magnificent debut of the park in 2026.
Chris, I want to shift to you now. Economic development here in Aurora. There's going to be a new fund that we discussed. $9 million for economic development, hoping that it'll be more of a recurring fund. You start with the $9 million now, and over time it could just continue to replenish itself. How did that come about? What's that going to do for the city?
Well, it came about, quite frankly, as a result of negotiations from representatives of the mayor's office, and particularly Mr. Alexandrou, discussing the enhancement of a particular data center in the vicinity of Eola Road and I-88. way back in the early to mid 2000s, there was a plan for that particular intersection to develop, as quite frankly most interchanges off freeways and expressways and tollways have developed in terms of a hotel, commercial area with revenue enhancing activities such as gas stations and restaurants and things like that. However, and the city invested some significant dollars in the interchange improvements and being able to access I-88 from Eola Road in that particular vicinity. When approached by the data center, which is part of the new economic vision and part of the new economic development hot trends that are coming forward in 2025, there was a desire to enhance and expand and place a new data center there. There was discussion of how the city could recapture its investment in that particular interchange, and there was a significant, I believe the dollar amount was $16 million that came from Cyrus One, who developed the data center, or is developing the data center out there now, to the city. So the city has actually planned about 4 uses, significant uses for that fund. One of them is a business transformation fund that will be modified or that will be administered by Invest Aurora. We are talking about a $9 million economic development revolving fund that will be administered by the city that I'll talk about. And then the 2025 budget also includes enhancements for facade improvements as well as historic preservation within the community development budget department. But in terms of the $9 million revolving fund, the city is actually going to take that money, and the intent is to take those dollars and invest them in opportunities that will be able to pay back the fund and continually develop on a perpetual basis economic development over time.
Yeah, I'd like to think, since I've been in this position, we have had certain opportunities to control our own destiny and to make something where maybe we didn't think about it before, but created a new opportunity. So we did that, and we've done that with projects like the casino. We certainly also now had the opportunity, after many years of looking at this interchange in a traditional way, but then merging that with new market realities. So the new market realities right now are data centers are red hot, artificial intelligence and the need for data storage, the business needs that are clamoring for more and more storage is just incredible. And so the real estate prices, especially along I-88, what's becoming a tech corridor, we had to shift our mindset. And so for me and for the mayor and our team, it was, wait a second, city, as Chris said, we invested a lot of money into that interchange back in like 08, 09, and there wasn't quite the traditional recapture, what they call. And so at a minimum, we would have been remiss if we didn't at least seek to make the city as whole as possible before we shifted gears on a different use over there. So everybody loves seeing restaurants and hotels and gas stations to catch that revenue from the traveler, the commuter. But it just didn't materialize there. So knowing that we had all this significant development at the next interchange west at Farnsworth and 88, we said, let's see what we can do. And Cyrus One and their proposed tenants, they stepped up, we negotiated, and we created this $16 million opportunity. And even though it's not as sexy as, say, the $9 million or the 5 that we're committing, 3 and then 2 to the new area alliance, the new economic alliance that Invest Aurora is part of, I'm particularly proud of the historic preservation investment. We've, I think, doubled the budget for historic pres, if not maybe a little more for 2025, plus creating, we just talked about it this morning, we're creating a program we haven't had in the city for 15 or more years, and that is assistance to businesses to improve their facades, right? And so we're looking at not just the downtown, but throughout the city for that. And so look for that to be launched in 2025, and that's another $1 million. So we're hoping that with the stated purpose of the transformation fund, which will replenish itself through strategic development agreements and the like, but that we can also grow the other two funds. So grow historic pres, grow the facade program. I think all of these initiatives aren't just lifting the entirety of our economic development, but they're giving opportunity to folks. And I'm looking at it as an attraction mechanism. So you come to Aurora, you've got all these different opportunities to get assistance strategically and improve your business, but also for existing business. So not just new businesses, but from a retention level, current businesses. So it's a very exciting time. And I think the city, and I'm thankful the mayor and the council has stepped up and approved these initiatives to start laying the foundation for the future.
And it's a really unique opportunity. There aren't many opportunities in a city where you get a lump sum that's significant enough that you can make and can establish a fund that will perpetuate itself. And as these economic development opportunities arise and the revenues continue to come back to the city, which will in turn be invested in more economic development activities, it can really have a significant multiplier effect in terms of how we're able to proceed with economic development, which again is really the lifeblood of a city.
And we talked about public safety, economic development. Let's get into a little bit of education before we move on to the property tax levy and get into some details about that. So Aurora's Promise, the Child Savings Account program, just got passed at council. This is fresh. Alex, why don't you talk about what that is and really what that means for Aurora? It's huge.
Well, it's huge, and it's related to what we were just talking about. This is another instance where the city has leveraged a contribution of about $150,000 as seed money, and the idea was what to do with this money. We already have a very robust Aurora Education Commission and a partnership with all our school districts. We have brought on Dr. Craig as our Director of Education and Workforce Development, and then through community services, the mayor wanted to see something along the lines of a child savings account that would become a multiplier of sorts, but one for financial literacy and teaching kids at a very young age and their families. And so bringing also in our Financial Empowerment Center and those objectives to start a very simple process managed by a third party. So we just approved a great group called Operation Hope, who have done this in other cities. Atlanta, I think, comes to mind very successfully. And so it's a starting point, but it's so much more. And so I'm grateful that City Council approved it. Our terrific staff is really excited about implementing this. And the two pilot school districts are very enthusiastic about getting it done, School District 131 and 129. So there is a need out there. And I think, once again, we creatively used a contribution as seed money, matched it up with a really good set of plans here to create a child savings account.
And I think as that becomes more robust here in Aurora in 2025, we're probably going to do a separate episode just on that, especially as it gets kicked off, because that's going to be, once we get more details, it starts moving. I think that's a future episode right there.
All right, you got it. You got it.
Let's go to the property tax levy, right? Because a lot of people are asking about taxes too. They want to make sure that they're getting a bang for their buck from the city when they pay their property taxes that come to the city. So the levy was just passed 2 nights ago at council.
Correct.
What is the property tax levy? Let's start there.
Yeah, for 2020, for the 2024 levy year, which will be collected during calendar year 2025, it's approximately $92.5 million in terms of the property tax levy. That is a slight increase from the 2023 levy year, which was about $87.5 million, give or take. So we are seeing a bit of an increase in the property tax levy. We've been able to leverage significant growth in the city's equalized assessed valuation, the tax base of the city, to provide additional revenue and rate relief. As part of the property tax levy, we are expecting that the city's portion of the property tax rate will decline by about 1.1%. That marks the 10th straight year that we've had and seen and experienced a drop in the city's property tax rate. Additionally, that rate, which is just under $1.68 per $100 of EAV, is the lowest rate that we've experienced here for the city's portion of the tax bill since 2009.
Wow.
So thinking about that, and the fact that 15 years has passed and we're at the same rate we were about 15 years ago.
And here's what's interesting about that to me, right? I'm not necessarily a finance guy, but when you say that, it gets me really excited because that all goes back to economic development, right? Property values are going up, more new businesses are opening up here in Aurora, and as a result of that, residents are getting property tax relief based on that rate each and every year. So that's really a credit to, obviously, the administration and finance to continue to bring new businesses in, to continue to incentivize property redevelopment. That allows residents to not have to pay as much in taxes.
Correct. And John, as we go back and we think about historically what's happened since about 2017, the city's EAV, the equalized assessed valuation, has increased by about $2 billion. That's billion with a B. Dollars. It's gone from $3.5 billion to what we anticipate will be $5.5 billion when we receive the final 2024 numbers sometime in the spring during 2025. At that same time, and what that has allowed, we talked about the decline in the tax rate, and we're now paying the lowest tax rate since 2009 for the city portion of the tax bill. Well, in fact, since 2016, that rate has decreased by about 20% as we've moved forward in time. So we've been able to provide rate relief for our residents while still taking advantage of the growth to provide additional revenues for city services and operations.
And I think it's important to note the tax levy itself, right? There's a separate council action that comes to approve that. There was some discussion, and Chris and I both clarified, there's really not a year where the tax levy can just be flat. And the reason for that is because we don't set, for example, police and fire pension obligations. Those are statutorily set by the state of Illinois. And so we merely are passing those through, and we have traditionally put those on the tax levy. So but for what we get every year as a statutory requirement, and that changes from year to year, that's where you saw, for example, this year, a $3 million increase in the levy. That was not anything other than covering the police and fire statutory obligation for pensions. And of course, we've said earlier, this city, this council, the mayor, they have prioritized public safety. We have a massive investment in brick and mortar and technology, but mostly nothing happens. We can't do what we're doing from a public safety standpoint without people, without personnel. And so I'm very proud that under the leadership of Chief Cross and Deputy Chief Thomas and all those wonderful police officers and telecoms and CDTs, I mean, it's a big team effort there. But there is a cost to that, just like there's a cost to personnel in general. But that all ties back to results that we're getting, and they're outstanding results. And the fact that we've continued to be able to decrease the rate is a credit to everyone. And everyone rowing in the same direction from an organizational standpoint.
It's also important to note, too, we talked about this, and I want to make sure it gets out there, that only a small portion of residents' property tax bills actually come to the city, right? They're going to go to the county. They're going to go to the school districts. Now, that said, the city has a great relationship with the county, with the school districts, so that way those dollars are still going to be used effectively, even within city limits.
Well, I mean, we're at about 46 square miles, 4 different counties.
Wow.
So we certainly collaborate, and we're meeting, and we have a great relationship with all 4 counties. At the end of the day, each county, each taxing body, they're their own entity. They have their own boards, their own rules, their own missions, their own purposes. And so, there are some communities, Chris and I have joked about this, they pull out the old dollar bill, and they'll even take that graphic and show which portion of that dollar bill goes to who. And in our city, we have school districts, we have county, we have townships. There are so many different governmental entities. All of them rely on property tax revenue for a large portion of their existence and their ability to operate. And so sometimes people don't quite understand that, or if you just have moved recently here, but it is worth educating yourself, because sometimes people get a tax bill and they're surprised. But then you really have to break it down to look and see, okay, here's a library district, here's water and sewer, or whatever, you have a fire protection. Wherever you live, you have different layers of government, and that's how the system is set up, especially here in Illinois. So for us, we're trying to manage most responsibly the money that actually comes from residents through their tax bill.
Yes.
Chris and Alex, I'll ask you guys this before we go into some more personal stuff on the budget, but with that rate going down again, and obviously with all these big projects set to come in 2025, could we anticipate the rate even going down further? I mean, if things stay as they are.
Yes, I think that as we continue, and especially with the level of development activity that we have in the city currently, I believe that the rate will continue to decline, and we'll continue to see that trend moving forward in time. Not just as we go through 2025, but probably a little bit even longer term, given the plans, given the level of development, and given the economic benefits that we expect that those will provide.
And keep in mind, too, what's on the horizon. The new casino will open in 2026. Additional development is happening right now out at Fox Valley Mall. We've got the plans coming online in the next few years for Bilter. So there are some significant revenue generator, job generators, basic increase in commerce and activity. All of that will not just increase revenue over time, but don't forget about that EAV, that this will also help continue to increase equalized assessed value for city properties. We're seeing, for example, in and around the Bloomhaven development, increase in value of properties and more interest, and that in and of itself is raising everybody in that area. We've been recently put through council some new housing developments. The prices that are predicted for these homes, I look at what's happening down at Del Webb, for example, the Del Webb Pulte development down on 30 and Wolf Crossing in that area. They are selling homes at an incredible pace, and now we're talking to them. They're coming in to increase the capacity down there and build even more. We've got great interest for the 2 commercial corners down there. So all of those things, it's that ripple effect. You get a qualified developer, they come in, they build a beautiful development, and it's almost like that Field of Dreams line. You know, if you build it, they will come. And people are excited to come out here and live out here and send their kids to quality schools and have shopping capability and entertainment and arts and culture. And certainly this budget also, we're trying to reflect our diversity, right? And so we didn't really talk about the special census, but the expenses for that are built into the budget, and we're hopeful that the special census process will yield additional revenue for the remainder of time that we have till we get to the next regular census in 2030. So again, all that combined will help keep the budget going in the right direction.
A few more questions before we finish up. What a great roundtable, I have to say. Tons of information and a really good opportunity for residents just to learn more about the process of budgetting here.
Well, that's
in
why I
and of
brought
itself.
Chris here, is to make us look
Yes.
really good.
Yeah,
So,
I'm not an expert. I'm just the
Correct.
host. Let me ask you both this question. What's the most rewarding part of this budget process?
I think the most rewarding part for me is seeing the culmination of the budget from all the hard work that everybody's put in, and then seeing the budget come to life in terms of actual purchases, or when I see things coming through then for council for approval that were based on things that we talked about maybe a year before or 2 years before, just seeing them come to fruition, very rewarding for me, because I know that they're advancing the ball, they're moving things forward. So, for example, these fire stations were just discussion dots on a board, and people shaking their head, going, "Oh, we're never going to. How could we do it? No way." But then we rolled up our sleeves, using data and evidence, like I like to say, and we got it done. But it doesn't happen in a vacuum. You've got so many people, finance and legal counsel and accounting and budget, fire operations, all of those things, and I'm probably missing somebody, go into this recipe to churn out 3 new fire stations.
And for me, it's similar to Alex. It's the culmination. Certainly, when the budget passes, there's a sense of great accomplishment. For,
a little relief
for ourselves, and probably a little relief as well. For
and a long exhale
for ourselves and the departments. But one of the things I would like to emphasize and expand on is this is truly a team effort. I've made the comment before that the detailed workbook for the budget is about 1,350 pages long, 1,350. You can't get that done, even if you're working on it year-round, without everybody picking up the ball and moving it as far as they need to move it, and in a lot of cases, moving it even farther. It's just truly a team effort, from having the data entry that the departments go through, having them fill out all of the decision packages, helping us put together the capital plan, the staffing plans, all of those items just coming together. And then there is also, similarly with Alex, I've been around long enough that I can look at and point to certain things that I can remember when they were just drawings on a piece of paper, and it gives you a sense of great accomplishment to know that you were a part of that in some way. So it's truly just a good feeling to be able to participate in things like that.
One more question for both of you before we wrap up today. Chris, I'll start with you, and I'll have Alex get the final word. What does it mean to you to have such a direct impact on the future of this city?
Well, I think I alluded to that a minute ago. I think it's a sense of great accomplishment to be able to look around the city, know that you're helping to move the ball forward, bring economic development opportunities into the city, help people realize their life dreams in accordance with those opportunities, creating and being a part of creating new places for people to live, and also providing people the services they need, particularly those services that they need when they are in need. Being able to help provide for public safety services, medical services, public works types of services, and also being able to help people by filling in some of the gaps in some of the social programs. The city has a long history in investing in its residents and helping to fill those gaps for those services that people need to be able to live and thrive.
Yeah, for me, it's an incredible honor to be part of this team and to have such an impact. Both Chris and I live in Aurora. We've lived here for many years. We've raised our families here, educated our kids through the school system here. And so to be able to impact people's lives on a day-to-day basis and make sure that the budget keeps up with the demands and needs of our residents. And do we cover everything as well as we could? Not always. There's, like I talked about earlier, and Chris did too, there's reality and there's limitations, but we are doing our level best to bring back as much revenue, as much innovation and programming and creativity and collaboration as we can. All of that is reflected in this budget. And from year to year, it changes. We hope and pray that we'll never have a situation like 2020, but I can tell you there's resiliency built in this budget. There's contingencies. And we pivoted very quickly in 2020 to keep city government running. If we had to do it again, we'll certainly do it. I think we have the right people and budget in place to do that. But again, we know people want to be safe. They want clean drinking water. They want an environment where they can live, work, play, shop. I think we're doing that, and it's just really been an honor and a privilege for me to be allowed to be on this team and help make these decisions. But certainly it's a team effort, and I'm very, very proud of the team and very, very proud of the 2025 budget in particular.
That's the last word. Alex Alexandrou, Chris Minick, thank you both for joining us here today.
Thank you, John. Great job.
Thank you very much, John.
Chris,
it was
great
a
work.
pleasure. Oh, thank you. You as well.
When's the budget kickoff?
I think we're starting tomorrow.
No, March of 25.
Yeah, it will be in March. But quite frankly, I would not be surprised to hear that some of the departments have already started considering 2026.
I'm sure they have. Good for them.
We will see you next time
All right, guys,
on Inside
thank you.
44 with Alex Alexandrou.